Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you here as, football's back. We're back from the bye week. How was the bye week, gentlemen?
It was solid. What did I do? I went to 2 football media availabilities, so really there was no football bye week.
How about you, Elo?
It was nice, and I just want to thank personally Mother Nature and Major League Baseball for washing out baseball to allow us to record this episode of the podcast so Murph could be locked in on the episode instead of focusing on the Yankees and the Astros. I appreciate Major League Baseball pushing it back.
I could not agree. I could not agree with you more on that. We've got a lot to talk about actually in this episode. A lot of little things to talk about, but we're going to start obviously with previewing the football game against ECU as UCF returns from the bye week. Feels like it's been like a month since that loss at Cincinnati, but here we go. UCF is a 33-point favorite. We'll break that down. We got a lot to talk about in terms of soccer. And we're also going to talk about some news a little bit with Eric. You had Kendall Rogers on your podcast on the In the Circle softball podcast. Talking about the third paid full-time assistant job for baseball and softball, so we got a little bit of sound from that. We will also hear men's soccer. We've got Scott Calabrese and a little bit of post from that. So I want to talk a little bit more about men's soccer, and then we'll wrap up with a little basketball and football news. Tacko Fall, obviously. B.J. Taylor also signing an NBA contract. He signed a Exhibit 10 deal with the LA Clippers. We'll yak about that for a little bit. And then also, Eric, I know you're so excited to break down the results of the XFL Player Draft and 3 nights going in that. So
bam.
We will
3-day, man.
We will break that puppy down in granular fashion. But first, let's start talking about the UCF football against ECU. Knights are back from the bye week. How many days off? 15 days off? Is that right, Murph? Because they played on a Friday night.
Yeah. I mean, they would have 14 days off because you wouldn't count Saturday when they're playing.
Right.
Yes,
so,
correct.
And some would argue that they still have the week off. I'm not saying that, but
you can say it, Jeffrey. Just say it.
Okay. If you're going to pick a team other than UConn that you want to come back from the bye week against, I would say East Carolina is a pretty good opponent to come back for. UCF is a 33-point favorite over the Pirates, who don't let that 3-3 record fool you, ladies and gentlemen, because their only wins have come against Gardner-Webb, William and Mary, and at Old Dominion by 3. They are coming off a loss 2 weeks ago to Temple at home by 10, and congratulations, you get 2 weeks off to face UCF in Orlando. The Pirates, it's been a little bit. To say it's been a rough year is a little bit of an understatement. We were looking forward to some improvement from them, but they really haven't done it. They're 99th in the country in total offense, 51st in total defense, which is not bad, but not spectacular. Their red zone defense is horrendous at tied for 111th. So, Brian Murphy, if you're going to work on your red zone offense, which is one of the things that UCF wants to work on, who better to work on it against than the team that's tied for 111th in the country in red zone defense? Am I right?
Sounds about right. I think, for as much as we can talk about UCF's issues, one of the issues they haven't had is really putting away the teams that they should. And while they've had close games with some difficult competition, or at least I would say top 40 competition, they really beat up on the also-rans pretty well. And they've done that throughout the season, and I think they'll do that here. I mean, when you look at this ECU offense, and you just take out their Gardner-Webb inflated 48 points back in early September, you have offensive totals of 6, 10, 19 and a win, 24, 17. This team can't score, at least certainly not enough with UCF. The defense is not bad, but again, this should not be much of a task for the Knights.
Holton Ahlers is back at quarterback for ECU. He's got 6 touchdown passes on the year. He's averaging 190 yards a game. His top target is Blake Prohl. And if that last name sounds familiar to it should. He is Ricky Prohl's son. Is that right?
I hope so. You just said it.
Well. Anyway, he is the son.
As we frantically look for who his father is.
Well, yeah, no, Ricky.
He's the son of Ricky Prohl.
He is the son of Ricky Prohl. Well, I was trying to figure out what's the connection because I know Ricky Prohl didn't play at ECU, but Ricky Prohl played at Wake.
Yes.
And has the unusual distinction of scoring 2 of the most significant meaningless touchdowns in Super Bowl history. But anyway, Eric, as you look at this ECU squad and what UCF has to do, what do you want to see? What do you want to see the Knights do in this game?
Well, first of all, that just reminded me of the Thursday night NFL game a few weeks ago, where Troy Aikman found out that Cooper Kupp's dad was his backup quarterback in Dallas, was on the roster of the Cowboys in the early 90s. He just realized that. He's like, hey, hope you're doing well. Yeah, hey, what do you know? Is that? So that was funny. Well, I think for UCF, I think you just want to come out and play well, and to Murph's point, jump on them, kind of like you did. Look, East Carolina, I think East Carolina is going to be headed in the right direction. Mike Houston's a new head coach in his first year, coming over from James Madison, where they built a national title program there at FCS level, very highly regarded. Obviously, the Scotty Montgomery deal didn't work, and I think this is an important hire because I do think if you're the American, East Carolina is an important program to try to get back to being good at football. And they really haven't been the same, ironically enough, since the Hale Perriman game back in 2014 when UCF won the game on the Hail Mary, where Rashad Perriman caught the touchdown to win the conference championship in the last game of the season at East Carolina. East Carolina has not been the same. Obviously, they fired Ruffin McNeil, which has turned out to be a terrible move, considering he had an offensive coordinator by the name of Lincoln Riley, who I've heard has done pretty good things since. So, they've had some troubles there. And I think they're going to be they are much more competitive. They're going to come out ready to play. So I think UCF has to be ready to play and not take them lightly. I think that's what John want to see, is coming out aggressive and jump on them like they've done on teams for the most part here at home. Home's not been the problem here, guys. It's not been the home field. UCF's played fine at home. It's just been away from home.
By the way, for those who are wondering about it, since that Hale Perriman game, ECU lost the bowl game after that, and they've gone 5-7, 3-9, 3-9, and now 3-3. So they have going back. Yeah, they're the curse of Rashad Perriman. It's true. Over under for this game is 62.5, and yeah, Murph, you've been around the team. There's really not much that we can talk about here to break down this game, other than it's time it's time to show that you're ready, that they're ready to play, and the offense has worked out its kinks during that bye week. Do you get the sense that they've done that, or what?
Yeah, well, I mean, I get the sense insofar as that they say they're ready to play. Which, what else would they say?
Right. It would be news if they came out and be like, man, that bye week was awful. We are just not ready to play. Could you imagine if they said that?
We are definitely unprepared for this. We do not want to play.
We did nothing but play Madden all week. It was terrible.
Yes. But, I mean, I think a lot of guys kind of openly talked about how a couple of things. One, they needed this break because when you're a program like UCF and you lose 2 out of 3 games, it kind of hurts your ego a little bit, especially when you don't lose for 2 years. So I think this break comes at a good time for them to sort of reset because they kind of needed to take a break. They after losing 2 out of 3, they needed to take a breath, and so that helps. Also, I do think that they have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, knowing in the areas in which they have come up short recently. That includes red zone offense and red zone defense. They got to force more turnovers. They got to run the ball better. Things like that. They got to hold on to the ball. Dylan Gabriel's got to be better at protecting the football. I think things like that have been pounded into their skulls. They know what their weaknesses have been, and I think they're ready to come out after the bye. And as tight end Jake Hescock said today, Wednesday after practice, Hescock said, we're ready to come out and make a statement. So that's what you should expect to see from this team, especially against a team that, again, they should bulldoze.
The schedule works out like this for UCF at least. Yeah, this is what I think is the big thing right here, and we'll cap it off on this. Is that I know that we hear all the time about don't look too far ahead. By the way, this game will be on CBS Sports Network. Kickoff is at 7 p.m. at Spectrum. The next game is at Temple, and that is going to be a monster game. Possible tiebreaker implications if Temple defeats Cincinnati down the line. Of course, there's nothing really that UCF can do about that anyway. But what is there anything that we can glean from this in preparation for that game that you think might give us a little bit of hint as to what we're going to look at, other than obviously what we just talked about with the red zone offense and all that?
Not really. I think this is like the UConn game in which, look, they boat raced UConn, right, as expected, and then had probably the worst offensive showing, at least the worst offensive quarter I'd ever seen them play in the third quarter at Cincinnati. So I don't know what you can take from one game to the next. The opponents are totally different. The locations and atmospheres are totally different. But so again, I don't think we're going to come out of this ECU game saying that all things are solved, because it's ECU, and I really don't know what you take away from this.
Yeah. Other games in the American, by the way, Houston is at UConn. The big game is at 3:30, and this will be on ESPN2 on Saturday. Temple at SMU. That game is a monster game for both of those teams. South Florida's at Navy. Tulsa's at Cincy. That's also at 3:30. That'll be on ESPNU. The Navy game is on CBS Sports Network. And then Tulane is at Memphis, and that's at 7 o'clock on ESPN2 as well, across from the UCF game. That is a big game.
Actually, that's the bigger game, because I think that's the Western Division. How does Memphis respond after losing at Temple on a controversial reversal on an instant replay on a ball on a fourth down that looked like was a catch, and then they reversed it to not a catch, and they used an angle that can only be used because it was in an NFL stadium. So a lot of controversy there, how Memphis bounces back against Tulane, who, very quietly only has the one loss at Auburn. So I think that's a huge game in the West. You mentioned the SMU Temple game. We'll see how Temple responds on the road against the Mustangs. The Mustangs, the only undefeated left in the American, and this is the concern if you're an American Conference fan, and heck, even if you're a UCF fan, if you think you're trying to get back into the mix of New Year's Sixes, I think everybody's going to beat each other up and eliminate each other. And that's the thing. And I think if you're in the league right now, you're the American, you probably prefer SMU right now to kind of ride this out, because otherwise you're probably going to look at a 1 or 2 loss teams battling it out in the championship game.
If you're a UCF fan, Eric, who are you rooting for in those games? Are you rooting for Temple to beat SMU, or are you rooting for SMU to beat Temple and kind of knock them down a peg in the East standings? Because that's a cross-divisional game. And I wrote earlier this week about that yes, there is still a path for UCF to get to a New Year's Six bowl. I know that you don't think it's likely. I get that, but so long as UCF can still win the conference, there's still a shot. So there is a scenario. It's a very weird and rare scenario, but there is a scenario where you could have a 3-way tie in the East if Temple, Cincinnati, and UCF all go 1-1 against each other, and then win all the rest of their conference games. So I don't know. How are you calculating that one, Eric?
I think as you're a UCF fan, you just got to worry about winning your own games. I think we're.
I know, but fans, they don't do that. You know.
But Jeff, what are we doing here? What are we doing here with all these machinations and permutations of, well, if this then that? Like, we got 6 weeks left. We got six games left.
Great app, by the way. If this then that. I was just anyway. Go ahead.
No, just way too early for this. And you allowed. Go ahead.
I agree with Murph, and I think it's going to be a moot point when Temple loses to SMU. So that's going to go out the window. So, and I still think Cincinnati's got a loss in them in the schedule. It probably won't be two, though. That's the problem. That's the question. Is it going to be one or the UCF's best shot to win the division, in my opinion, is to win out and hope Cincinnati loses twice. I would not, because here's the thing: you lose to Temple, all this is irrelevant conversation.
True.
And so I just think, to me, I know it's cliche and it's coaches talk, but we have this team has not this team does not deserve the benefit of the doubt that we're just going to win out. They haven't proven that. They got to let's win a game away from the state of Florida first before we kind of look ahead here and think we're going to jump teams. And that's the other problem is, as you saw this week in the bye week, UCF's not guaranteed to move up in polls like people think. They dropped in the polls here. You saw Appalachian State jump them, and I think that's going to continue. If a team like San Diego State, for example, wins out, and they're going to probably jump UCF before this is all said and done. So there's a lot of ifs to worry about that stuff. I think the only thing, and Murph's right, the only thing you worry about is win out, take care of what you can control, win your games, and then whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. So, first opportunity to do that, obviously, Saturday at 7 on CBS Sports. UCF, again, 33-point favorite over ECU. Before we leave football on the table, there is some alumni news to pass along. The XFL, Vince McMahon's apparent, second attempt at making a football league that's not the NFL work, held their draft, their inaugural draft on Tuesday, and actually finished it today. So the way they did the draft was kind of interesting. They drafted by positions, and so with skilled players, offensive linemen, and defensive front seven. So 3 former UCF Knights have been drafted by XFL teams. 2 of them by the Tampa Bay Vipers. Excellent team name, by the way. Rennell Hall and Jordan McRae, who both played for the Orlando Apollos of the Alliance of American Football. Interestingly enough, gentlemen, the head coach and general manager of the Vipers, Mark Trestman, former head coach of the Chicago Bears, longtime coach in the Canadian Football League. Also being selected, Tony Gerard, who also played for the Apollos. Gerard was selected by the Dallas franchise in the XFL. So we have 3 Knights, at least on the initial rosters here.
Didn't I see where Plummer and Matthew Wright also are joining them?
Yes. So Terrence Plummer and Matthew Wright are also on the Vipers roster as of
they
now.
were. Okay, so they must have been signed afterwards, right?
They were I guess added in phase 5 of the draft. Now, again, I'd like to point out that I have no idea what that means, but they're on the team.
They have a job. They have a job. That's a good thing. Yeah.
What's interesting in reading this, a lot of people think they've actually been surprised at the quality of players they've gotten on this. Some people think actually they got a better rosters overall in the league than they did on the AF. I mean, they've gotten more guys from the CFL. Look at some of the quarterbacks they've gotten in the league. Some people actually like the roster that the XFL has gotten. What that means down the road, who knows? That remains to be seen. But I'm happy for Terrence. I've known Terrence for a long time, so I'm happy to see him play in the States. And I've definitely seen – I think there's an interesting thing that a lot of the Canadian football players are playing in this league, which I don't think we saw that, Jeff, in the other league.
That's true, because they're I don't know what it was. I guess that the guys who ran the Alliance, they didn't want to tread on the CFL's ground, but Vince McMahon doesn't care about that. So let me tell you a little bit about Vince McMahon and how much he cares about things like territories, right? So I'm happy to see a bunch of UCF guys playing nearby in the state of Florida. That's good. I'm sorry that it's not in Orlando, but hey, Tampa's not that far away, right?
Kind of wish Orlando would be in this league. It's kind of work out in that regard, but hopefully.
Are we rooting for expansion, Eric? Are we rooting for expansion? Is Vince going to buy the trademarks?
You know more about that backstory, right? Because I guess originally, because the Alliance, they kind of jumped in first, so they grabbed Orlando. I mean, obviously Orlando,
right.
For those that don't know, I mean, that's a huge market for the WWE. They have their performance enhanced training center up at Full Sail. So Orlando's been a very good market to WWE. So I'm sure they would have wanted Orlando, but I guess the Alliance took it. And I guess, I actually, it stinks in a way. If they could expand, I think you would. If I were them, I would purchase the Apollos. Why not? They were the one success story as far as the Alliance, as far as interest and attendance, right?
I would think. Well, it was Orlando and San Antonio were the two markets that were the most successful for the Alliance, and I'm sure that the trademarks and all that kind of stuff is probably tied up in legal battles right now that are as the AAF. As the pieces are kind of picked up and tossed into the dumpsters. But I would not be surprised. Let me put it this way. I would not be surprised that if the XFL is a success on the field and on television, and all indications seem to be that Vince is actually taking the football seriously this time around, since the guy who's running the league is not Vince, but Oliver Luck.
He's got a better media relationship, better TV deal with FS1, who's got a big, they spent a ton of money on SmackDown, and ESPN. So you're not going to see the media crush the XFL like it did 18 years ago.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be proponents. I saw Joe Klatt was a part of their coverage. Tim Brando apparently is going to call them a game. So I think the production and all that will be fine. It's just, does anybody care? Time will tell. The bad news, Murph, is I think this is going to probably enhance the fact that the WWE Raw is just going to be a terrible show from here on out, right?
Well,
that's focus on football, right?
That's a low bar to clear. I just can't believe that we literally spent 2 minutes talking about XFL expansion.
Oh, it is UCF. Blame the UCF guys.
Look,
joining mid-league.
This is our parting shot here. Okay, listen, Vince, if you're listening, just buy the XFL marks and expand to Orlando. Okay, we're okay with it. We're happy with, Wouldn't it be cool to see the Orlando Apollos and the Tampa Bay Vipers? We could have like an XFL war on I-4.
I could not kill it.
And by the way, I would be interested in working as long as the check actually clears.
That is also a good point. By the way, defensive line coach for the Dallas Renegades, where Tony Gerard is going to be playing, Jim Jeffcoat, long time, very long time NFL defensive lineman from Long Branch, New Jersey. Originally played for the Dallas Cowboys for over a decade, and was the defensive line coach with the Orlando Apollos as well. So there's your connection there. So, all right. No more XFL talk. When we get back, we're going to talk about men's soccer. RPI is out. They get the overtime victory over Tulsa. And are they now a national title contender? We'll talk about that in just a moment. Stick around. Black and Gold Banneret podcast is back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you here. So follow us, by the way, at blackandgoldbanneret.com, UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. We have a lot to talk about in the so-called Olympic sports. I hate that designation, but there's really no other way for us to say it. And I want to start with men's soccer. So the RPI, first RPI of the season, came out. By the way, Knights are at number 11 in the United Soccer Coaches Poll. But UCF, after that thrilling 3-3 tie that we had with at SMU, they come back home and play Tulsa, go up 2-0, give up a pair of goals. But then Eric Lopez, you were calling play-by-play for this game, and it ended in thrilling fashion, did it not?
Yes, maybe a little too dramatic for UCF fans, but correct. I mean, they had a 2-0 lead. Tulsa came back, got 2 goals in the second half, forced it to overtime, and then the Knights get a red card because the player had 2 yellows in the match, so he gets an automatic red card, which means you're out of the match. That was Pepper, one of their defenders. So now the Knights are playing a man short in that last overtime period, the second overtime period, but they found a way to win. Cal Jennings, we talk about what a great goal scorer he is, but he finds a way to make plays. He steals the ball, takes it up, and then the Tulsa defense is trying to catch him, and he makes a beautiful cross pass over to Vivi, the freshman, who puts it in the back of the net for a dramatic 3-2 overtime win and keep their unbeaten streak extended now to 10. And that's a huge win because the way it's looking like right now in the conference, it's UCF and SMU, and it's going to come down to, is anyone going to blink between now and the end of the regular season as far as the regular season championship's concerned? You can't afford, even a draw at this point could be costly from a standpoint of a conference championship. So it's a big win for UCF. Their 5th time they've played an overtime match this year already. I believe it's the 3rd straight match they've played in overtime, and fortunate to get the win. First here is Cal Jennings describing that last play, what he saw with his vision to set up Vivi on the game-winning goal.
Yeah, well, I picked up the ball. It was great pressing by Jonas to kind of make the ball predictable where it was going. I was able to do the work, get in there, and then I saw 2 players to my right, and I knew it was a 3-on-1. If I could get it to them, they'd have an open net and a better opportunity to score than I would. So that's what I did, and luckily the ball got through, and great finish from Gino.
And then there was one more sound clip too, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, there's some concern here, Jeff. This second match in a row, the UCF has let a 2-goal lead disappear, and Coach Calabrese is the first to say, yeah, that's something that we need to work on.
We have to be willing to work for 90 minutes. And when you look at us, we're 2-0 up against SMU. They get a goal. We're 3-1 up against SMU. They get goals back. And they were avoidable. And so 90 minutes of concentration, 90 minutes of effort, 90 minutes of competing is the only way you can give yourself that best chance to get the right result. So I'm happy that we continue to get good results because it's always better to learn while you're winning as opposed to have to take a loss and then deal with the consequences of the loss and still have to learn the same lesson. So for that I'm really happy we got the result, but if we want to achieve things kind of in the postseason, I mean, even with the rest of our conference season, we're going to have to address this. We're going to do better.
But your team responded. I mean, things were not going your way, and you regrouped at overtime. Was there something you told the team between the end of the second half and overtime there to change things a little bit?
I think it's what they knew, which was that they were outplayed for 45 minutes, and they were outworked. And so that was brought to their attention, and that we can't play the way we want to if we don't do those things. That's kind of the prerequisite to play possession-oriented football, and to build up through the back and to get results are those things. And so our guys, they did respond. They did respond, and they were tired, and we were man down, and so that overtime was better. It was certainly better, but again, we can't do 45 minutes, be at a really high standard with our work rate and our concentration, and then another 45 minutes not have those same standards. So it's something that we know and that we have to address because these guys have high standards for themselves too. They're upset that game went that way. They're upset that the SMU result wasn't different and that we didn't take care of a 2-0 lead. So it's not just the coaches. they want this for themselves, and I think we all know what we need to do.
There you have it. Coach Scott Calabrese after the match talking to him there. So look, they got to clean that up here. They got to play full 90 minutes. They have a target on their back, and they got to kind of stay sharp. They can't afford to cough up those leads like they have, and I think they understand that. We'll see now what happens, Jeff. They're going to go on the road at UConn this Sunday, and then after that, the big one against South Florida in Tampa. And you mentioned the RPI. They're number 4 RPI. This is a team that's playing for a conference championship, playing for a national seed, and potentially try to put themselves in position, Jeff, where they could literally play every NCAA tournament match at home up until the College Cup in Cary, North Carolina.
Yeah. Now, okay, let's talk about this for a second, because they have 5 games left: at UConn, at South Florida, home for Stetson and Memphis, and then at Cincinnati. You mentioned that they are number 4 in the RPI. I think that's the big story, I think, for me that came down this week. They're number 4. They are behind number 1 Virginia, who's 10-0-1. St. John's out of the Big East at 11-1, and then Wake Forest, who's 10-2, and actually UCF right now at 8-1-2. That lone loss was to Wake Forest. Georgetown at 5, SMU's at 6. Down the line out of the American, you don't see another American team until South Florida at 39. So, okay, number 4 in the RPI is spectacularly high. And I think it's the highest UCF has ever been in the men's soccer RPI, if I'm not mistaken. Can we now say that this is a legitimate national championship contender?
Oh, it's definitely a College Cup contender. And if they can clean up some things defensively, I think they can be. I mean, no question about it, which is it's nice to say. I mean, but they have the offense. They're a top 10 offense. They've got a transcendent player in Cal Jennings, who is a goal away from being 2 goals away from 40 career goals. And I would argue, Jeff, might be the best UCF soccer player over the last 20 years. I'm not going to comment on players in the 90s and before that. There were some great players. I didn't get to see them play and have put up great numbers. But I would argue from about 2000 to the present, I don't think there's been a better UCF soccer player than Cal Jennings. I think he's legit. And we've had some great players that have gone on to play in the MLS in recent years. So that tells you a lot. So, yeah, I think they're a contender. The rankings prove that. They're number 3 still in the top soccer drawer poll. They dropped
top drawer soccer, right?
Yeah, they dropped 2 spots in the United Soccer poll because of the overtime game against Tulsa. But they're talented. They're explosive. But they got to play, as Coach Calabrese said in that audio, they got to play 90 minutes. You can't coast because teams are going after you now. And you don't want to have a slip-up or 2 because that could be the difference in dropping some spots. So, yeah, I think they have a shot to make a run here. Obviously in the conference tournament. First of all, I think their focus is the regular season title, them and SMU, and then you got the conference tournament, and you hope you get a high enough seed where you don't have to get on a flight during the NCAA tournament until hopefully the College Cup, which is like the Final Four for college soccer.
Yeah. By the way, Cal is actually a nominee for the Senior Class Award, which by the way the fans vote on. So if you want to take a look at that, make sure you hop over to UCF_M Soccer on Twitter. They actually have that link up there. We retweeted it out on UCF_Banneret, so you can get the chance to vote on that. It's really something.
Murph, I'll tell you, Murph, you were a long time ago in a past lifetime. You were a beat writer for UCF men's soccer back in the day. I don't think you ever would have thought about College Cup ever came up in any of during that time.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I don't want to throw any names under the bus, but when I was on the beat back in 2006, that was not a great time to be around UCF men's soccer. That was a period of transition and some turmoil, and that was not a good time.
And listen, back then there were people that didn't want to have the men's soccer program at UCF. There were some people, Jeff, and you know this. There was whispers. Some people were like, "Hey, why don't we add?" men's track, for example, so you could slip in some football players and things like that. There were a lot of people that wondered if soccer at UCF men's soccer would ever be successful at being at the shadow of the women's soccer program and the success they've had. So Scott Calabrese has done a phenomenal job, and I don't know if he gets enough credit for the job he's done. This is only his 3rd season. I don't want to say it too loud because there's a job open at Orlando City, MLS franchise.
Oh boy.
And if you watch the U.S. men's national team play at Canada on Tuesday, like I did, and losing 2-0 to Canada for the first time in 34 years, who knows? That job could be open too. So let's keep it quiet and hope that Calabrese stays here.
Yeah, let's keep it quiet on the podcast. Well done, Eric. Although I will say this. If Team USA decided to hire someone like Scott Calabrese or someone who coaches offense the way Scott Calabrese coaches UCF, a team that never met a shot it didn't like, soccer would be back to being fun again in the United States. I will tell you that because, again, this is the best soccer team in the state, pro or college, if you ask me. And they just play an exciting brand of soccer.
Oh, it is.
It's amazing. And it's fun to watch. And that game against Tulsa was a good example of that. For the blowing of the 2-0 lead, it was partially because that's how they play. They play basically run and shoot soccer.
Right. Tulsa has a great player in Partain who scored a couple goals. He's very good. And I'm glad to see people cover. The Orlando Sentinel was there. They were covering the match. And I think they're going to be starting to cover UCF soccer from what I was told on Saturday. So that'll be good. That's good to see that coverage.
Does that mean we're going to see more Murph at soccer again? Is he making a return?
Believe it or not, Murph's not the only one that covers UCF there, right?
Really?
I need a break. For me, we're getting into the really busy part of my season with football and basketball, coming together. So I don't know if I can take on soccer. I mean, I've done it before. I took on volleyball last year, so I wouldn't rule it out, I guess.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Sure.
Murph waits till only shows up for postseason. That's really what he's saying. Postseason now.
So we'll be eyeing up men's soccer coming up in the next few weeks as they have just 5 games to go. Here we go. So down the stretch they come, and then it's NCAA or American tournament, and then NCAA tournament time. So their counterparts on the women's side had the week off. Basically, they last played on Sunday, October 6th against Houston. That was a 3-0 win. But they play again Thursday at home against Temple. They got the 2 Northeastern teams in the conference coming in this weekend, Temple and UConn. Taking a look at the RPI, Temple is 226, UConn is 137. So this is not going to help the old RPI out, certainly. Although the Knights right now sitting quite nicely in the RPI, at least as of right now.
Well, they kind of dropped a few spots that we would have liked.
Well, that's true. They did drop down to 75. That's right, because they were up in the upper 60s, I think. I'm sorry. At 8-2-2, interestingly enough, only one spot ahead of Princeton, who's 4-5-2. You got a bunch of teams kind of hovering around 500, around where they are. They're actually behind DePaul, who's 5-6-3. They're behind Portland. They're 10 spots behind Portland, who's 4-4-3. Who, I mean, I don't know what the hell that is, but they're kind of hitting crunch time right now, and that RPI is going to start dipping a little bit as they play some of these weaker teams from the conference, right, Eric?
Well, you just got to keep winning. You got to keep winning. I mean, I've never seen anything like this in any sport. The discrepancy between the RPI and the coaches poll. UCF moved up to 21 in the coaches poll, as you mentioned. That's a huge discrepancy, and I just wonder if UCF were to win out, stay in the top 25, and their RPI, let's say, is in the 50s, 60s, what does the committee do? Do they put UCF in there, or do they actually leave them out and leave a top 25 team out of the NCAA tournament? Think how crazy that sounds. So this is fascinating. I've never seen anything like this. This is kind of why I think they just got to keep winning. You mentioned Temple and UConn. They got to win those. You got to then they go to ECU and Cincinnati. You got to win that and set up that showdown on Halloween night against South Florida, which more than likely is significant because the conference tournament is set up to where it's 6 teams make it. 6 teams make it. The top 2 get a bye. They've actually changed the format this year. It used to be that the regular season champion would host the entire tournament. That is not the case anymore. The 3 versus 6 and the 4 versus 5 matchups will now be hosted by the higher seed on campus. So which means, let's say you're the 3 seed, if you're which is either going to be UCF or South Florida more than likely, that means you got to play a home match in your place against a 6 seed and then probably get on a plane to go to Memphis, because Memphis more than likely is going to win the regular season title. So that means extra travel if you're the 3 seed compared to the 2 seed, where you don't have to play a game. You can just show up to Memphis ready to play with fresh legs in the semi. So that is significant. That could be looming on Halloween. But to get to that, UCF has to take care of business and on the pitch. You cannot have any slip-ups for the reasons you brought up in the RPI. Cincinnati
right now is actually, believe it or not, tied in the conference standings with UCF and South Florida at 3-1, although they are 5-6-2. By the way, you mentioned that. But you mentioned UConn and Temple. They are respectively 4th and 3rd from last. They're both at 2-4 in the league and both at 500 overall. Memphis, like you said, Eric, continues to lead the league at 5-0-1. That one draw was against ECU, believe it or not.
That was a stunning result. Yeah.
And by the way, Memphis 7-0 at home this year. 16 points overall in the standings and 13-1-1 overall. So I don't know. It's not looking likely that they're going to slip up anytime soon, but they could. So you never know. Their slate the rest of the way, I think, looks pretty made out to be pretty good for them. They only have 3 games left: Houston, SMU at home, and then at Tulsa. So they're heading down the stretch.
Probably their toughest match. SMU is pretty good. That's probably their toughest match left there, as far as a possibility of them dropping a match.
Yeah, and here's SMU at 8-4-1 overall, but 1-3 in the league. I mean, it's a weird year, and yet it's not in women's soccer in the Americans. So, but like you said, you got to take care of UConn and Temple at home to begin with. Volleyball, 12-6 right now, 5-1 in the conference. Got a weekend sweep when they needed it in an odd weekend. So this is their kind of crossover weekend where it's split between home and road. They played South Florida last Friday, dropped the first set 26-24, and then steamrolled them the rest of the way to get a 3-1 win at the Corral. Then came home to face Memphis and got the sweep there. So I say sweep of the weekend because they won both the matches, not because they swept every match, obviously. But that's bigger that they needed. They've won 3 in a row now after getting swept at Cincinnati, and like I said, 5-1 in the league right now, 12-6 overall, and now they have the toughest road trip of the year in terms of distance coming up this weekend. They play Friday at 8 at Wichita State. Wichita's not what they used to be. Remember Wichita went undefeated that first year in the American, Eric, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, what are we doing with this team?"
Right, that was a big talk, right? Like, other than men's basketball, that volleyball, that was going to be a big boost for the league with Wichita State.
Well, not so much this year. They're 4-14 overall, 1-5 in the league. The toughest test that UCF is probably going now. Still, it's a loud gym that they play in, so it's gonna be a tough match anyway, because their fans are insane. But in terms of the quality of play, the toughest match they're going to have coming up is at Tulsa on Sunday at 2. By the way, you can watch that through Tulsa's website. There's a live link on UCFKnights.com. You can watch it at the Reynolds Center. Tulsa right now remember they split the league up into divisions for volleyball this year. Tulsa is tied for second in the West with SMU and Tulane at 4-2. Tulsa's 11-8 overall. Houston leads the division by 2 games. They're 6-0, 12-9 overall. Also in the East, on the UCF side, Cincinnati is 6-0, UCF is 5-1. Everyone else is under 500. But Tulsa's probably going to be the toughest match in a jammed up West right now. And yeah, I mean that's it. Either way, though, as we look at the RPI, Eric, UCF right now is sitting kind of pretty right now. They're at 29 in the RPI, 1 spot behind Cincinnati. Not too bad considering you got swept by Cincinnati, but at 29, you're in a pretty good spot for at-large consideration if you don't win the tournament, which, by the way, UCF is hosting the first ever American Athletic Conference volleyball tournament. Tulsa's RPI right now is 58. And that's going to be a key match,
Tulsa.
right?
It's a big match. I mean, Tulsa's a bubble team. So, I mean, I think Cincinnati and UCF are in good shape to make the tournament. The question is, and this is where we're going to get into this more as we get closer to that conference tournament, is will this tournament help or hurt the league as far as getting more teams into the field of 64? I think in Tulsa, this is a big match for them. They're on the bubble.
Well, this is where I think what Todd Dagenais said at the start of the season when he talked about the tournament was pretty interesting, because the reason why they formatted the tournament where it was 6 teams in the top 2 and then the division winners get the byes is because they were concerned about if you dilute the tournament field, it really hurts the teams that are in the top 50, top 100 in the RPI in volleyball. And the RPI is everything in terms of tournament at-large selection right now. So, if you're UCF, even if you lose to Cincinnati in the tournament, you're probably gonna get another good RPI game on your schedule there, and likely at least 2 against top 50 opponents, or at least top 75, assuming that if that happens. Tulsa right now is at 58. As you go through the I know Wichita's at 138, but rolling through the top parts of the RPI, Cincinnati 28, UCF 29, Tulsa 58. That's the third highest RPI. You got SMU at 70, Tulane at 73, and then Temple knocking on the door of the top 70 of the top 75 at 78. So that could, depending on how they finish out, that could be good for UCF. I don't know. We're going to really see how that plays out in the tournament. It's not the best year for the American in terms of the RPI standings right now, but they do have 2 teams in the top 30, so that's going to be tough to watch.
One thing that seems to be the case, Murph, I don't think you're going to get a chance to cover a regional in volleyball this year like last year when UCF got to host. I think unless they were to win out, and I think it's going to be tough to get a top 16 seed this year.
Well, if they win out though, I mean that would include at least 1 win against Cincinnati and probably 2 if they play them in the tournament, which would be a big boost for UCF.
Could be. Will that be enough? Who knows? Otherwise, I think they would be traveling probably Florida if they win the SEC with Mary Wise and company, or maybe somebody like Louisville. So Murph, if you want to cover another volleyball region, you might have to travel. That's my point.
I might just be willing to do that. You never know.
They could ship him out to Hawaii. Hawaii is 9th in the RPI. That'd be a nice road trip, wouldn't it?
Is that now? I might do that, but only if UCF football isn't also shipped out to Hawaii around the same time.
For the Aloha Bowl. Oh man, look at
the Aloha Bowl.
Oh boy.
That's true. I guess you're right, because Hawaii's a 9 RPI, so they will host. They could host in theory. Wow.
Yeah. Well, Hawaii has hosted before. They've done it. I mean, they're a power in volleyball every year in and year out. Dave Shoji, longtime coach at Hawaii. I mean, built a machine out there for the Wahine. So that obviously UCF volleyball has to take care of business at Wichita and Tulsa. The Tulsa win should be if UCF wins against Tulsa, that will be a big, not a big boost to their RPI, but quite a bit of a boost. It should be, at least in terms of their resume. One last thing I want to talk about here in this segment. We had Media Day, Basketball Conference Media Day. And we had both the men's and women's sides with the preseason polls and the preseason awards as well. And we'll start with the men's side just real quick, Murph. UCF not picked to be very good in the American this year. The coaches.
Come on, Merv. How can you not vote for us better, Merv? You're an influential guy.
I did not get as much flack as Eric gave me for touting that I did get a vote in the football preseason poll. I shall say that I did not get a vote for this one.
Well, the men's basketball, the men's basketball preseason poll is voted on by the coaches.
There's a media poll.
Oh, there is a media poll? It says, well, here's the release from the American. Houston and Memphis have been selected as the preseason favorites to win the 2019-2020 American Athletic Conference men's basketball title in voting by the league's head coaches, the conference announced on Tuesday.
Wow. Murph, you didn't get a ballot, Murph. No, that explains it.
There you go. Houston and Memphis were tied at the top. Houston had more first-place votes than Memphis. I find that really surprising. Cincinnati third, Wichita fourth, USF fifth, UConn sixth. All the way down at ninth is UCF, ahead of Tulsa, ECU, and Tulane. Jaron Cumberland is the preseason player of the year. No UCF players made the all preseason teams. And pretty much most of the players coming in for UCF, with a few notable exceptions, will probably have a uniform patch on their jersey saying "Hello, my name is." Mm-hmm. So, any surprises about that? Do you think it's low, high, probably right where it should be? What do you think?
No, it's fine. I expect them to be. I would have them a little higher, but like no higher than like seventh at best.
By the way, 8th SMU, 7th Temple, just for reference.
I could see UCF being ahead of both those teams. And I will say this again. I know Eric disagrees, so maybe he can go into why he disagrees. But I am pretty surprised that Houston, considering the offensive talent they lost, that Houston got most first-place votes. And secondly, I think people are still sleeping on USF, who I contend still is my bold prediction to be second in this conference behind Memphis.
Oh.
That is a hot take. That is a hot take.
Yeah, you take your take to the Daily Stampede, all right? No, I agree. Actually, I agree with Murph on. I don't know about second, but I do think South Florida is really good. I mean, they're kind of in a similar boat where UCF was last year. Maybe not to the degree, but close enough where the high expectations there for the first in a long time to make the tournament over there. With the job that Gregory's done there, right, Murph? Is that kind of, and they got a lot of guys back.
Oh, they got everybody coming back, and they were a young team last year, and everybody's back. I think that team and that team is athletic up front with Yetna. Their point guards are another year experienced, and I really like that team. My thing is that team didn't lose anybody significantly, and yet we've got Houston losing both Corey Davis and Armani Brooks, and Cincinnati working in a new head coach. Now, I don't mind the new head coach. I think he will, basically bring the same sort of gritty mindset that Mick Cronin brought to Cincinnati. But I am, Eric, a little worried about that Houston team. I certainly don't think they are going to win this conference.
Well, I agree with you, but I'm not surprised that the coaches voted for Sampson over Penny Hardaway, because I could tell I'm pretty sure that if you poll the coaches off record, they're probably not the biggest of Penny Hardaway.
A little politicking there, huh?
Yeah. I guarantee you that's what this is about.
Okay.
For a variety of reasons, right? Just the way he talks smack. Some people maybe have a problem in how he recruits. Whereas,
That's not loaded, is it?
Let me clear my throat.
Yeah.
So I think it's not an accident that they're going. And I think, look, they're going to go with the brand, right? We talk about football and the brands and, people voting for the brand. I think the reason why South Florida is behind Cincinnati and Houston is because Houston and Cincinnati kind of get the benefit of the doubt, fairly or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, too, where South Florida really hasn't, in the coach's mind.
They haven't proven it, and they didn't prove anything in, last year. That would lead you to believe that they would be a legit conference contender, at least as of just yet. But they could prove us all wrong. After all, it is a preseason poll. The women's side was also represented at Conference Media Day. Okay, you guys are going to have to clarify this for me, because it says that for the 7th straight season, UConn was picked as the American Athletic Conference's women's basketball preseason favorite, as voted on by the league's 12 head coaches.
Right.
Okay.
I know what you're going to ask.
Bear that.
Or you even ask it.
Okay, bear that number in mind, ladies and gentlemen. 12 head coaches in the American.
Well.
Very next paragraph. The Huskies received all 11 possible first-place votes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
With USF earning second in the poll with 107. The Knights, UCF, were picked third in the conference and received the lone non-UConn first-place vote. Now,
good for Gino. All right.
Okay,
Gino.
So apparently you can't vote for yourself. Is that right?
Correct.
So Gino picked UCF, gave his vote to UCF. Obviously, I think if Gino could, he would vote for UConn. He would be stupid not to. But,
Sure.
I'm I'm a little surprised he dropped UCF in there as his number one pick and not South Florida. What do we read into that?
Maybe he's trying to make nice with Coach Abe. You know, things kind of ended.
I'm suspicious.
What do you mean? What are you suspicious of? What? Like, what do you?
I'm suspicious of Gino Auriemma.
How about the fact that Gino just thinks that UCF is the second best team in this conference? That's not big of a leap.
Which, by the way, I agree with him. I actually think he's got it right, and the rest of the coaches got it wrong. I think there's still questions about South Florida. Now, obviously, Jose Fernandez is a brilliant coach, but they lost a lot of injuries last year. Some players have departed with graduation, and you know, so I think there are questions about South Florida, how good they're going to be. And I know UCF lost some players, but they do have arguably the best player in the conference that doesn't play at UConn in KK Wright. So yeah. I actually kind of agree with Gino. I think Gino's like, yeah, UCF, we played them in the championship game, and quite honestly, they give us bigger, tougher battles than anybody else in the league does. So, yeah, you're going to get the second my vote.
Well, we've got both UCF and South Florida are dealing with a number of departures. Interestingly, UCF is only returning 5 players. They're returning a total of 5 players. But one of them, like you mentioned, Eric Lopez, is KK Wright, who was voted preseason player of the year along with Crystal Dangerfield of UConn. By the way, does this not set up one hell of a matchup between those two at some point a little bit later on this year with UCF and UConn? The two best point guards in the league, at least in terms of what we think in the preseason, getting ready or going at it at some point. I'm checking the schedule right now, but well-deserved KK right?
I wouldn't push that narrative too loudly on the week of the game. All right, we want to play, not just go in quietly, play a nice game.
By the way, they play January 16th in Orlando, and then February 22nd at UConn. By the way, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, let's be nice. Last year, UConn here, thankfully, play nice, and let's get second place.
They both made They don't poke the bear. No. They both played. They both were named preseason all-conference first team. Dangerfield was unanimous, by the way, as was Mia Davis of Temple. I'll be honest with you. And since, by the way, UCF was tied for third in the preseason vote with Cincinnati, who, by the way, they've done a fantastic job the last couple of years. I hired a new coach last year, and things seem to be turning around for the Bearcats. But, I'm still a little surprised that UCF – I mean, nothing against UCF at all. I thought that the departures would have pushed UCF down a few notches, probably in that 5-6 range, even with KK.
No, wait.
Because UCF lost a lot of production last year, especially on the defensive end. That's the reason why. But I'm not saying I'm unhappy to see UCF get that level of respect. I'm just saying I think that the Knights still have a lot of things to figure out here, don't they?
Yeah, but we say that every year, and Coach Abe figures it out. I mean, every year she's been there, they've been finished, I believe, top 4 in the league at worst. I don't have it in front of me, but she's been at the top, so I think it tells you that, hey, she'll figure it out. And again, as I said, she's got the best player in the league that doesn't play UConn in her roster, and that's the most important thing. And, I think they like some of the young players that are coming back. We'll learn more about it at Media Day next week, so we'll see. My concern about them is if you look at the schedule and the conference schedule, you mentioned Cincinnati and UConn, alongside USF. I think everybody feels those are the top 4 teams in the league.
Mm-hmm.
UCF is the only one that has to play UConn, Cincinnati, and South Florida back to back to back twice in the schedule. UConn doesn't have to do that even once. Cincinnati or South Florida don't have to do that. UCF's got a rough stretch twice. Not only back to back to back. That's the thing that concerns me, the way the schedule in the conference played out.
Yeah, that's ouch. That's going to be a rough stretch.
Yeah. Can somebody let the league know that we're not leaving? It's UConn. Why? Just saying. Just saying.
Oh, they're gonna try and squeeze all the blood that they can out of that rock in this last year for UConn and the American. But
Murph, have you covered a UConn women's hoops game during this time frame here?
Yeah, no, me and you both were at the game in which UCF held them to their lowest point total of the season.
55, yes.
2 years ago, right?
Yes.
So.
I mean, this is it. This is it, Murph. Last time we see Gino at the arena here this year. I mean, I'm gonna miss that. Gino's fun. Gino's fun and impressive.
Gino's
a fellow Yankees fan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gino's what do you call it? His denim Nikes with the largest swoosh I've ever seen in my life. It's unbelievable. All right. Well, UCF women's basketball gets underway Wednesday, November the 6th. They play the Pittsburgh Panthers. And again, it starts at 11 a.m., interestingly enough, for that game. So, and that's our first chance to see KK Wright in the preseason conference player of the year. All right. Stick around. When we get back, we'll talk a little bit more shop around here. We'll talk about the baseball legislation that's coming around. Turns out we might get that extra assistant anyway, and that's good news for UCF softball and baseball coming up. And we also got a couple other things that we'll be talking about as well that you want to stick around for, particularly in terms of some UCF NBA news that we'll be able to talk to you about. Stick around. The Black and Gold Banneret podcast is back after this. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy joining us once again here. Now, I wanted to, we got some, it's a good week for news and notes stuff, right? So, first thing we wanted to talk about, so Eric and Brian, the third paid baseball and softball assistant, which we were all flummoxed by the NCAA voting it down a few months ago, apparently is back on the table. It's funny how when there's why can't they just vote it over the top the first time instead of having to see what the backlash is and then be like, oh, we made a mistake, maybe we should actually have it again. So Eric, you've been following this very closely, and Brian, I know you haven't. You have been. So Eric, I'll start with you. What is the deal? What is going on with this?
So this Friday, they're going to do a re-vote, potentially, to try to put the legislation back on the table to vote on it. Yes, you have.
So they're voting again to have the vote again.
Yes, basically.
Okay.
This is and the reason why, and I had a full in-depth interview with Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball.com on the podcast I host, In the Circle, on Fast Pitch News. It's In the Circle SB on Twitter. You can follow that whole episode. It's out. It came out Monday, and the reason was because there was some chicanery going on with the last vote, where some people voted no, even though they were supposed to vote yes, including the American Conference, where the representative kind of went rogue, even though the coaching staff wanted to vote yes. So there was stuff like that was going on, which Kendall explains in the interview why all of a sudden this has life in it. And we hope, anyway, that has life. We'll know Friday if they will re-vote. They got to re-vote to see if it's up for legislation. And if it is, then they might vote on it again on the deal. But, this is about a third position full-time assistant coach. That's for baseball and softball. That's the big gist of this. And this has been a hot topic in the sport of baseball. As you'll hear here, a snippet from my interview here with Kendall Rogers, and mentioned Greg Lovelady, which Murph will comment here after the audio, talking about the discretion, the importance of having the third assistant, and perhaps administrators not caring enough about baseball and the student athletes in baseball. Here's Kendall Rogers.
Well, and it's even worse when you think about it in financial terms. You look at college baseball. Most places, it's the number 3 sport behind men's football and men's basketball. And then you look at the NCAA level, and you're talking about college baseball being the number 2, gross revenue sport in the championship level. So what I mean by that is obviously NCAA does not run college football in the Division I level, so that's separate. But they do run the FCS, tournament. They run the men's basketball tournament, women's basketball tournament, and baseball actually sits right behind the men's basketball tournament ahead of FCS football in terms of money making for the NCAA. So There's a school last year that, cut a check to the NCAA for over $1 million for the regional. So we know the NCAA is making a lot of money. And again, this is not the NCAA doing this. But my point is when it's making millions of dollars for the NCAA and it's making money for some schools, it's giving a lot of schools notoriety in a major sport. It just blows my mind that this is so hard to pass. And it blows my mind, honestly, that college baseball doesn't get more love from administrative level. It's like having a business and having a product that's a hot selling product, but not applying any kind of marketing budget towards it. It makes no sense. And this is the same way, I feel like.
All right, so there is Kendall Rogers explaining the revote and then the assistant coach ratio as far as baseball is concerned, which is one of the worst. And Murph, you were there when Greg Lovelady spoke out about it back after the vote first was denied back in the spring. I think it was April. So obviously it's a big moment. Greg Lovelady's been very outspoken among other coaches about this particular topic.
Yeah, and he's got a good point, as do many other coaches have a good point. I mean, college baseball has really grown over the past, decade or so, or 2 decades. And so what they need to do, or what they need to do to have the sport continue to grow, is to make sure that they have more coaches around these players. Because right now, Eric, they have, again, the worst coach-to-student ratio of any sport in college athletics. And even after this, I believe it still might be the worst. It'd be like, even if they get the third paid assistant, it still might be the worst coach-to-student athlete ratio. But to help these kids and to convince more kids to maybe, not go from high school to the pros, but go from high school to college, get that extra coach in there who is being paid full-time for the work that he's doing to mentor these kids. And I think that's the best way for baseball to go about it. Everybody knows this. And the fact that it got voted down the last time was just so it was
stupid. It was completely stupid. Yeah, it
was apathetic. It was malicious. I just think people did not really just don't care what happened. So hopefully that's changed. Again, I don't know of a huge portion of people other than maybe some private ADs who don't want to pay the extra money, or university presidents who don't want to pay the extra money. But outspoken-wise, no one is saying that this is a bad idea, because it's not. It's necessary. We need more coaches for our student athletes. And to have a coach like Ted Tom was last year for UCF, although now he's paid, to have a coach like him basically be a full-time coach but have to make ends meet otherwise because he's only a volunteer, that makes no sense. But hopefully that is seen out to be true by the administrators and conference representatives this month, because I don't know, we all thought it was going to pass last time and it didn't. I mean, we thought in the AAC, the take in the AAC was, all of the all of the schools voted for yes, we were going to pay the third assistant. And then when it came down to vote, the conference rep voted no. So actually, the AAC came down as a no vote.
In fact, Murph, here's Kendall Rogers. Let's play the clip. Kendall Rogers explains exactly that situation you just described. The American coaches thought it was going to get voted, but the representative, who was from Cincinnati, had other ideas. Here's Kendall Rogers.
Well, the American and the ACC are about to drive me crazy, because the American voted in favor of it with the coaches and with the athletic directors. Yet, when it came time to vote, Maggie McKinley from Cincinnati, on behalf of the American Conference, voted against the legislation, against her own conference, citing this whole, I didn't know softball was included. Well, that's been included the whole time. So, either A, you're just lying, or B, you're just not very competent on this issue. So that's been frustrating. The more frustrating thing to me, though, has been the ACC as of late. My understanding is the ACC was going to be a no vote. I found out they were going to be a no vote. I started reaching out to ADs. Some of these ADs that were going to vote no realized, oh, man, everybody's going to find out the way they voted. They flipped their vote. They voted yes inside the conference. Yet when they got to the NCAA Division I Council meeting, Blake James from Miami essentially went along with all these conferences that were voting no, once he realized he had the votes, a no vote, he went ahead and voted yes or voted no, but then on the backside voted yes to basically save face because the vote was going to fail no matter what. Because what happens here, people, these smaller conferences, they just kind of go the way of the wind. And so if the legislation looks like it's going to fail or it looks like it's going to pass, they're going to go one of those two directions. And so what happened here is the ACC essentially went out and made sure they had no votes. And then after the fact, after they voted no on it, they went and voted yes. And so that is why you're seeing this issue brought up again. That is why you're seeing the NCAA even allowing a vote to re-vote to actually occur because of these shenanigans. And so, ironically enough, Eric, Blake James, the Division I Council chairman for the AD in Miami, ironically enough, it's amazing how this happens, is this guy is no longer on the D1 Council. So it's funny that this happens, and yet this guy doesn't have to answer for anything because guess what? He's no longer on the council.
All right, there it is. That was the explanation there from Kendall Rogers in the podcast. So, Murph, there it is, man. To your point. The Cincinnati rep went rogue on that. Like, it's unbelievable. I've never heard of anything like that.
No, I don't think anybody had. And again, it just the takeaway for Lovelady that day was sad. He was just disheartened by how things had turned out because it looked so positive for the conference going in. And I certainly hope things change now. Because it needs to. It absolutely needs to for this sport and for baseball and softball to grow and to be better and to continue to continue to grow as sports.
So do we think it's going to pass? This is the last question on it.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I keep following Kendall. Kendall's got a lot of connections. I mean, it depends on who you talk to. The problem is there's some people here that don't want to do it because softball's involved. There's some people that, quite frankly, don't want involved. And he mentioned this to me in the podcast. The Big Ten, for example, is very anti-baseball, so they don't want this. They have over 1 million sports they care about more, like wrestling and things like that. So it's very complicated in that regard. And the unfortunate thing about it, let's clear this up. It's not mandatory. Like, they're just giving you the opportunity to bring in a third full-time assistant. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But it's just unfortunate because this creates a lot more jobs for coaches. And like you mentioned this, Murph, and you've covered big college baseball. I've covered you, all three of us. Mm-hmm. The volunteer coach, and I speak for the same in softball. They're basically a full-time coach, but not getting paid. And that's the travesty about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to have to follow this. And by the way, huge thanks to Kendall for the insight on this. And I know that. A little cross-promotional here. Make sure if you're into college softball, you need to subscribe to Eric's podcast, In the Circle, as well. How can you follow that podcast again, Eric?
In the Circle SB on Twitter. Of course, your favorite podcast places, like you're listening to this podcast. You can listen to the In the Circle on Fast Pitch News podcast. You can go to fastpitchnews.com for all the details on that. Full in-depth interview with Kendall Rogers as they're getting ready with fall ball here, because UCF had their first practice in the fall on Wednesday, and we've been told that Aaron Fitt will be coming down here in the near future to kind of see what UCF's got, which, Murph, is going to be interesting here. First practice, a lot of new faces that I know you're going to be seeing trying to get to know here in the next few weeks.
Oh, my God. I mean, the 2020 baseball roster is up right now for UCF on their athletics website.
Is anyone on it?
Well, that's the thing. You can tell how many kids are new just because they don't have a headshot yet. Right. The kids who are back are the ones who have a picture next to their name, and then you have about half the roster that's just a name with no picture. There's
put up a bunch of Twitter eggs. Roster. Remember the Twitter egg?
Yeah.
That's right. I want to talk about basketball real quick. We had some news come down. Obviously, Tacko Fall has been the darling of the NBA Summer League. He's been the darling of the NBA preseason, and the Celtics apparently liked what they saw, so they signed him to a two-way contract, which for those of you who are unfamiliar with how that works, basically it's kind of like signing two contracts in one. You get paid your G League salary, but then you can get called up at any time by the big club, and then you get paid, an NBA game check. So Tacko will play in the G League, he will be with the Maine Red Claws, which, if you know us and are familiar with us, and familiar with UCF basketball players recently, Jermaine Taylor played for the Maine Red Claws for a number of years. It's the Celtics affiliate. And so we're happy to see Tacko get on there. I have a feeling that we will see plenty of Tacko in Maine, but I would be shocked if we did not see the Celtics call him up at some point too, right, Murph?
I think so. Maybe late in the year, because I think he's going to sell some tickets.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you want to treat him like a basketball player, and as a basketball player, you want him to get minutes and to hone his game. And to do that, he needs to be in the G League. So yeah, I do think there's a good chance that we'll see him a little bit in the NBA. He can spend up to 45 days on an NBA roster on the deal he's on. But it'll be much less than that. But I think we will see him.
Now, late breaking news today. We're recording this on Wednesday evening. One more NBA prospect coming off of UCF's roster from last year. B.J. Taylor. He signed today an Exhibit 10 contract with the Los Angeles Clippers, and will likely send him to their G League affiliate, which is called, this is a great team name. You thought the XFL was great. The Agua Caliente Clippers, who play in Rancho.
Hot water, by the way. That's
yes,
hot water.
Hot water. Who play in, yeah. Great, thank you for that. Who play for
gear on that? I mean, we got to get some gear on that.
They play for the. They play in Rancho Cucamonga, and BJ's going to get a shot. Now, I was. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little surprised that we saw BJ get his shot before we saw. Before we heard anything on Aubrey Dawkins, but apparently. Doc Rivers, who's still at the head of the Clippers, and by the way, makes his off-season home here in Orlando. I actually saw him in a restaurant this summer in Orlando, by the way. Likes what he saw from B.J. Taylor, and is going to bring him into the fold. So, what do we think about that, Brian?
I think it's a good story for a kid who has worked really hard to get to this point. I mean, I think B.J. is a nice player. I think the biggest thing about BJ is he's just tough, man. He's a tough point guard. I don't know if again, I don't want to break down the basketball minutia of where he fits, but for UCF, it's a good story.
You think he's pretty much going to be a G League guy, or do you think that the Clips might take a shot on him at some point?
If I had to bet, I'd say he's strictly a G League guy.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, though, injuries could impact some of those things, like call-ups and things like that. Because, for example, the Clippers are going to be without Paul George for the first month with shoulder surgeries. So who knows, depending on how things play out, And then if you have other injuries, Kawhi Leonard sometimes takes games off. So they could maneuver the rosters, and I would say the same with Tacko and the Celtics, where injuries could impact those decisions. Hey, we need to bring them up here for a game or two because we're a little banged up. So I think those are the things to look for. By the way, BJ has tweeted out Wednesday night, beyond excited to announce I've signed with the LA Clippers for the upcoming season. Extremely blessed and grateful for this opportunity. Dreams do come true. Still hungry, though. This is just the beginning. So BJ obviously very excited and not a bad run. I mean, the Clippers are going to be a title contender. So, I mean, that's not a bad team to hang around. I mean, a very talented basketball team with some great guards there.
If I might say so myself, Southern California is a nice place to live and do your work.
By the way, Aubrey Dawkins, I did mention him, was originally an Exhibit 10 prospect in the Summer League with the New Orleans Pelicans, but did they decide to pick him up or no? Is he a free agent right now?
I haven't seen him on their roster, but I haven't really heard anything official. I'm guessing though that they have not.
Yeah, because I didn't see him in the G on the G League's list of players, at least as right. But we still have plenty of time because we're right now in that. As we approach the beginning of the NBA season, we're kind of in that mesh point where guys are starting to get assigned and signed and then reassigned, and hopefully Aubrey gets a shot somewhere. So hopefully we'll hear about him in the next couple days.
If there's Orlando fans and Magic fans who are disappointed that Tacko Fall may not be in the NBA, he's still going to come down in Central Florida area, sort of, in Lakeland.
That's right.
I think March 24th and 25th, the Maine Red Claws face the Lakeland Magic. So if he's still in the G League at that point, just go a little bit down the I-4 and you can see Tacko play this spring.
And by the way, and watching him in preseason, I watched the pregame warm-ups with him. He's been working, and he talked about this after the game with us. Jay Larranaga. Jay Larranaga is an assistant on the Celtics staff, is the son of Miami Hurricane head coach Jim Larranaga. They've been. Is it
Jim Larranaga or Jim Larranaga? Sorry, I had to. Anyway, go ahead.
That's all that needs to be said. They've been working with his shot, and I told Murph this, and he literally almost fell off his chair. Which was when I told him that Tacko made 3 threes in a row in warm-ups, and he's got a nice shot now all of a sudden. Like, he was taking perimeter shots that they've been working on with him. So he's looked very good on that. He played the last few minutes of the Celtic game. The best part about it was that the fans were really ready to, hijack Brad Stevens if he didn't put him in, because they were like, we want Tacko's chance throughout.
He didn't score, though. That was a bummer.
No, they didn't. That doesn't matter. He was there. That's all that mattered.
Yeah.
Apparently, Murph, did we get conclusion here? Did he wreck or not wreck Mo Bamba's car? What do we learn on that?
Wait, what?
Mo Bamba said that Tacko Fall wrecked his car, wrecked his Tesla. Tacko says, nuh-uh, I didn't crash his car. Someone backed into me while he was trying to park.
Wait.
So it's not his fault.
Wait, what? First of all, wait a minute. What is Mo Bamba and Tacko Fall doing together at the same time, considering that they're both, not on the same team?
No, but they're friends.
Okay.
They're friends.
So you're just chilling.
Well, they weren't together at the same time. Tacko, I don't know if they were driving. I don't know if Mo Bamba was in the car. Tacko was driving. He might have just been borrowing the car. And whatever, he got a little fender bender while parking, but no, they're friends. I mean, this isn't like the 1970s baseball where no one talked to each other.
Yeah, fair point. Okay, I got you.
That's a very great line of 70s.
1970s baseball.
We have audio for clarification.
We do? We have this?
Yes, we.
Okay, let's go.
Tacko Fall, post-game scrum afterwards here with myself and Mr. Murphy, among others, here with Tacko Fall following the Celtics Magic preseason game.
You've been working on your jump shot there in the pregame. How's that been going there with Coach Larranaga?
Been going pretty good. We have a coach in the staff, Jay, who's been really helping me with it, and I've been seeing a lot of improvement.
Tacko, how would you describe just your life over the last 5 months with the draft and now getting into camp and now playing in games? How would you describe your life over the last 5 months?
It's been crazy. It's been a little overwhelming, but it's like I said, I'm really thankful for what has happened. It's been a great journey, and I'm really looking forward to the future.
I think UCF fans fell in love with your story with your mother and your brother late last season. Has your mom been able to come back since March?
She has not, but they just gave her a 10-year visa, so she can just come back and forth whenever she wants.
Do you have any plans to get her back out here next time?
No, she will.
Oh, she will. Well, how do you feel like, we talk about your movement a lot, but other than that, where have you feel like you have improved the most since you got with the Celtics?
My feel for the game. I feel like I'm a lot more patient out there, and I can just see that I see the game a lot better. And there's still a lot of room for improvements, but I'm learning every day. So.
Mo Bamba said before the game, I talked to him, and he said you crashed his car. Did you crash Mo Bamba's car?
I didn't crash his car. Somebody hit me. It's a difference. I was driving it, and then somebody was pulling out of parking, and he hit me from the back. So it wasn't really my fault. But his car was fixed afterwards.
What kind of car was it, though?
Tesla.
Final question for Tacko. You guys have been so close to Mo for so long. To be out there on the court here professionally together, what did that mean to you?
It means a word to me. It's always good to play against friends, especially people you have got to become really close to. And there'll be many more. So I'm really looking forward to that.
All right,
that was good to hear. That was good to hear. It was good to see Tacko and a lot of friends there. So we hope for the best for him, and it's just exciting.
Yeah.
And It's pretty amazing, the popularity for Tacko, and he's very appreciative of it. So we hope for the best. And as Murph said, I think it's good for him in the long run, and I don't think it'll be the last deal. We'll see him on an NBA court at some point for whatever role it is to be determined.
I hope so. I'm just bummed that now I have to root for the Celtics. Ugh. Anyway,
technically, for what's the nickname again?
The Maine Red Claws.
I don't know. I might word for the Agua Caliente. I might be more of a fan of the Agua.
I love that. Maine Red Claws, by the way. Go ahead.
That means hot water.
Well, lobster claws do turn red when they are dipped into hot water. So, I mean,
stop pushing the joke too far, Jeffrey. Stop, go.
I'm like killing the dad jokes today in this podcast, man. It's bad. It's really bad. I'm so sorry, everybody. The Maine Red Claws, by the way. I don't know if we have any NBA fan or any UCF fans up in Maine, but if you're interested in watching Tacko, they play in Portland, Maine. So at the Portland Exposition Building. So yeah, should be fun to watch. All right, let's wrap this puppy up. Start with you, Bri. What do you have coming up this week, other than coverage of football and everything else that's going on? What do you have on tap?
That's it. Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, cool. Oh, good. All right, excellent. We're on the money. How about you, Lopez?
Wow. Well, let's see. So third, first of all, on the blackeaglebannerhead.com, we have our 3 stars, which might be up by the time you're listening to this episode. Me and Jeff work on that. That's already ready to roll. So that's on there. I will be Thursday. I will be back on the pitch, calling action for the other ranked team, the number 21 ranked Knights women's soccer team. I'll be there again. Temple on Thursday night. Maybe joined by Bridget Callahan to help me out, which is good, because I almost lost my voice the last time I called soccer, so that'll be nice. I'll be there Thursday night. Then Friday, Murph's going to be jealous because I get to catch a little fall ball, softball, Murph, little fall ball action in person first time. So I'm going to be at softball on Friday. Then Saturday, we're at football. I will be working stats for the CBS Sports Network's crew, part of that crew. So if you see those cool graphic stats, basically that's the stats I'm providing them with the help of the official stats crew at UCF. Really, they do all the work. I just pass along the information. And so that'll be fun Saturday night. And then Sunday, I'll be there for the alumni UCF UConn women's soccer game. So a lot of soccer ahead, as well as softball, fall ball. I'm excited. Softball season as well, just around the corner, Murph. And then before we know, we got the NBA season going next week, and basketball media days just a week away, Murph.
Yeah, well, next Thursday afternoon, we get the basketball media day for both men's and women's basketball.
There we go.
Should be fun.
And conference preseason co-player of the year, KK Wright. We'll get to talk to her.
There you go. See, are you happy, Jeffrey? You campaigned, and now
it's happening. And by the way, co-players of the year with Crystal Dangerfield too. So of UConn, who, by the way, really liked her. I thought she was a superstar in the making. So all right, let's wrap this puppy up. We've got, don't forget, obviously, to follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com, UCF_banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. And, of course, follow not just us, but also Luke Saris and Jeremy Brenner and all of us as well on Twitter for all the latest, including, by the way, after the ECU game, we're going to roll with another night shift after the game. Probably won't be a long one, hopefully, unless something terrible happens. But
me and Murph are out. We're both working the game.
Yeah, you guys. It'll be me and Jeremy and probably a wild card in there. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll figure it out from there.
I'm going to be busy trying to get Merv some café caliente afterwards.
Ooh.
Means,
now we're talking.
That means hot coffee for those.
All right, let's get out of here. We've caused enough trouble for Eric and Brian. I'm Jeff. Thanks for listening. This is the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Enjoy the game on Saturday.